I was the one, I'm going to chase you down the street. I'm going to blow up your phone. I'm going to send you dissertations through text. We're going to talk about this right now.
Right.
Like, no, I'm going to talk about this right now. There's been times where, I've tried to, even like he would lock the door. I'm trying to unlock the door. I was crazy. I was crazy. Okay, that was very toxic and ineffective communication because nothing was getting resolved. Right. We were not getting.
Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationships from surviving to thriving.
And don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes.
Today on TMC, we have Miss Ariel Harper with Sex and Communication.
I am a wife. I am a mom. I currently reside in Delaware. I'm also a teacher by trade and profession. And I also love to help out women and wives in their marriages. A little bit more about me. My husband and I, we have been married for 7 years. We have the same, yes, we have the same anniversary as Beyonce and Jay-Z. It was not planned. It wasn't planned, but I take a little pride in that. I used to really be like a Beyonce fan. I'm not so much into her newer stuff, but when we got married 7 years ago, I was like, yes, I got, we have the same anniversary. So I'm happy about that. We have 3 children. We have a blended family. We have Lauren, she's 12. Isaiah is 6, and Cassidy will be 5 next month.
Awesome. Tell us about the Wife Advisor. How did it come to be, and what does it do to help others?
The Wife Advisor started, I would say, back in 2018. The idea of the Wife Advisor started back then because, like I said, I got married in 2015, and I was struggling in my marriage. I didn't know how to be a wife. I grew up in a single family home. My mom raised me. And she taught me how to be a woman of God. She taught me how to communicate with others. But because she did not have that role of being a wife, she could truly show me and teach me how to be a wife. And so my early years of marriage, I struggled bad. Like I prepared for my wedding day. I prepared, with all the fixings and the trimmings and, the wedding dress and the bridesmaids and, the venue and all of that. But I didn't truly prepare my heart to be a wife. And so the first few years I struggled in communication. We struggled in our intimacy. We struggled in our finances. And I didn't really have a group of wives, those Titus 2 women that I could connect with. I was the first and still the only woman in my friend group to be married. So I couldn't lean on them. I didn't want my family and them to be in my business. So I was just like, man, where do I turn to? Who do I turn to? Okay. And so, like I said, I'm a teacher by trade. And so that teaching spirit of wanting to be able to help other women in this area, because what I did was I began to get into the word of God. God showed me how to be a wife. It wasn't anybody else. It was God who gave me the downloads on how to be my husband's wife, how to be his rib. And so now that I had knowledge and information and revelation knowledge on how to be a wife, I was like, I know there's other women out here who are struggling just like I was. And so I wanted to create community. I wanted to create tribe for those wives, those millennial wives who were struggling in those areas. So I went ahead and became a certified coach and created the Wife Advisor. And it helps women in communication. So I have been named the communication queen, all right, by LB. She is the wife coach. And so she gave me that title of the communication queen because communication is very dear to my heart. Because I believe that most times things can be settled when we are able to communicate effectively. Many times divorces can be prevented when we're able to communicate about the things that we need and the things that we want. And so I teach them how to communicate. I teach them how to be helpmates. And I teach them how to navigate through those tough times in their marriages.
Wow, wow, wow. You shared a little bit about the struggle of you transitioning and becoming a wife. So let's settle there for a little bit, because I know a lot of times that is an issue, for many of us raised in single parent homes, or even if our parents were divorced or whatever, we don't have that example. So that struggle is there. And you talked about a lot of areas that you said caused a struggle in your marriage. What is the one thing that you wish you had known before you got married that would have helped you in that struggle?
So many. But I think the one thing that I've kind of come full circle to now, I wish I would have known that somebody would have told me, I'm going to have to die to myself. Marriage is not about me. We think it's about us because I got
Yes,
this
we
ring
do.
on my finger, I got this bling, and my husband, my husband, my husband. It's not about me. Marriage is a ministry. And I
Yes,
had this
yes.
mindset that I was going to be served. I had this mindset he's going to make me happy. I had this whole, I'm against, and I stand firm in this, that I don't believe in the happy wife, happy life.
Mm-hmm.
It-
Yeah.
as much as I love him, and as much as he's my best friend and a great father and a great husband, he's not going to always be able to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
not always gonna
Help
be able to make
us.
me happy. So the one thing that I wish somebody would have told me was, you're gonna have to die daily, and you're gonna have to be a servant, because it's not about you, boo boo.
Wow, wow, wow. Yeah.
Oh. You said something earlier. You talked about marriage and preparing for the wedding, but not preparing your heart. What did you mean by that?
So ever since I was a little girl, and even into college, I dreamt about my wedding. Like, I was planning my wedding, even in college, even before I was engaged or was in a steady relationship. I was planning my wedding, my colors, my who was gonna be in my wedding, like
Right.
all the things. I planned all of that, and so nobody truly put emphasis on preparing me or my husband as well, because he grew up in, I won't say a single family home, but he was in a blended family as well.
Yeah.
He had a stepdad that really, he really didn't have a lot of father figures to really guide him as to be a husband as well.
Mhm.
And so nobody really pushed the issue of premarital counseling. So our pastor gave us premarital counseling, but I always say that I felt gypped because he compiled a 3-hour session into 1 hour. And so that was the only premarital counseling we had, 1 hour with our
Wow.
pastor. And so I really felt gypped. And so nobody, like I said, my mom wasn't pushing it. Nobody else in my life was pushing. Make sure you get premarital counseling. Make sure you go to, get prepare yourself,
Yeah.
And people always say, oh, marriage is work, marriage is work, marriage is work. And so nobody was truly pushing me to just prepare my mind, prepare my heart, prepare my spirit of all this dying I was going to do, of all this serving I was going to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. You talked a little bit about the struggle. You've talked about, what you wish you had known. And what is the one piece of advice you help wives, you are either future wives to be? So what is the one piece of advice that you give to all of them? Or what is the one piece of advice you feel all of them need to know?
I would tell them, my one piece of advice is communicate. You have to communicate, because, when it comes to conflict is going to arise, right? Usher says conflict will arise, but we got to be smart about it, right? He has that one song, you don't have to call. And so we have to think about effective communication. Like I said, my mom taught me how to communicate. She gave me the tools. I'm articulate in what I have to say. I'm able to, speak my mind. I will speak my mind. But I didn't know how to communicate with my man, right? I loved him and everything, but I didn't know how to talk to him. I didn't have that manology.
Yeah.
I like that.
I didn't have none of that.
I love it.
I couldn't, I wasn't speaking his language. And so we have to know how to, on top of love languages, we need to know apology languages. We need to know how to communicate the time, the place, the when, where, why, how, when conflict is going to arise. We have to prepare for those things.
Yeah.
We have to prepare for the conflict. We have to make a plan, because, sometimes there's men out there that, all right, let me just say, babe, I think we need to talk about this. And there's some men that you just got to be like, babe, do you remember that time that right? So you have to know
Right.
your man. You have to know
Yeah.
how to approach him. And so
Absolutely.
you have to be strategic, and you have to know what's happening, how we're going to do this, and just plan it out. Communication is important because as women, we are orators, right? We know how to push buttons, right?
Mm.
And we know how to get our points across.
Yeah.
And most men I have found are logical. They're straight to the point, right? And women we can be a little bit more emotional.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to women and their communication, we, like I said, we have to have that manology. Sometimes I can't be emotional. I can't pull on his heartstrings with my tears. I
Mm.
have to think a little bit more logical in a way that's going to get him to understand,
That's good.
right?
Yeah.
And especially with where I know where my husband comes from, knowing his background, his mom, right? That's a trigger for him. So if I start crying, he's like, oh man, he
Yeah.
can't deal with my
Yeah.
emotions. So when I come to him after I stop being emotional, after I stop being in my feelings, then I can go to him. So we have to know ourselves, we have to know our husbands. And I will say that when it comes to that effective communication, I used to be toxic in my communication.
Mm.
I used to be very toxic. We both used to be very toxic, but I will say I was toxic. When we would come across conflict, I was the wife that and the girlfriend and the fiance, because I
Mm.
brought this toxicity into my marriage.
Right.
I
Come
was the
on,
one, if
help
we
us.
had conflict and I'm going to chase, he would leave. He was an eloper. Like he would elope and go AWOL. I was the one, I'm going to chase you down the street. I'm going to blow up your phone. I'm going to send you dissertations through text. We're going to talk about this right now.
Right.
Like, no. I'm going to talk about this right now. There's been times where, I've tried to, even like he would lock the door. I'm trying to unlock the door. I was crazy. I was crazy. Okay. That was very toxic and ineffective communication because nothing was getting resolved. We
Right.
were not getting to the other side of the conversation. It was just a cycle, right? And then that would in turn make him go into silent treatment.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's no communication going on there. So it was just this toxic cycle. And then once we realized that, we didn't get married to get a divorce. This is not why we sat in front of God and from our pastors and our family and friends. We did not get married and say I do for us to get a divorce. So we're gonna have to pivot. We're gonna have to shift. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to learn and educate ourselves and become aware in order for us, if we're going to have this long lasting marriage. So we had to
Mm.
really train ourselves and educate ourselves and restrain ourselves. I had to do a lot of restraining
Right.
when it came to that effective communication.
Wow. Ariel, I mean, you just given us a lot of nuggets. And
Right.
I know that, as women, especially, when we want to get our point across, we can go to certain levels. So when we talk a little bit about the toxic communication, and you talked about the residuals of it because it would cause him to shut down or something. And when you're working with wives, how often do you see this as the problem? And what are some tips? You said you learned. What are some tips that you can give? We've been that wife, that fiance that's been in this toxic communication for 5 years, and now we're realizing it and we want to change it. What can we do?
So definitely there are women who have come to me and said that he doesn't want to communicate. He's always shutting down. And women don't like that. I realize for myself and from other women that I've worked with. But what you can do for those women who are experiencing this, you have to be okay with going to your corners. You have to be okay with stepping away, right? You have to be okay with, you know what? This is elevated. This is, intense conversation.
Yeah.
I don't want nothing is getting resolved here. And you have to be okay with him stepping away. Sometimes we have to step away because they have to. And some women are like this as well. Some women are the ones who shut down. And so we have to be okay with, all right, let's cool down. Let's take a moment and we will come back to the table about that. You have to be okay with that because you're never, and I always say, get to the other side of the conversation.
Yeah.
Make sure you get to the other side. We want to get to the other side so that we can move forward. And so in order to do that, we have to be able to be okay. You know that Kevin Hart, he had that keyword, pineapples, right? If you have a keyword, pineapples or hot dogs or whatever it is, use your keyword. Like, listen, I don't want to get disrespectful because when we start getting heated, I might say something I don't mean. I might say something out of pocket. I don't want to disrespect you because I love you, right?
Right.
So let us step away, right? And you have to be okay with that. That's what I had to learn. I had to be okay with it, not try to push the issue, but be okay, and we'll come back.
That's good.
Good. I love it. I love it. We've talked about toxic communication. You talked about effective communication, and you talked about the importance of it in a marriage, in a relationship. What is one other thing that you think is also important in the relationship?
I believe that one other thing is to continue to date and be intimate, and continue to listen. That sex thing is vital. It's
Yeah.
vital. And something that I struggled with also is just knowing that sex for a man is not just a want. Biologically, it's a need. That is a need for him. And I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I read the word of God. And so that's how God made man. He made him to release seed, right? To be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
And so when I struggled with this whole intimacy and sex and being able to give myself to my husband, because I grew up in church. Everything was abstinence, celibacy. And when I got married, I didn't know how to turn that off. I didn't know how to turn that mindset of, okay, let me go ahead, and it's okay. You married now. It's legal. You can do it. Right. I struggled in my mindset when it came to that. And so we suffered. He suffered when it came to our intimacy and our sex life. And so for years, I will literally say 4 years. And I will say, even as recent as of last year, it's been like a good year since we've kind of gotten out of that rut. But for 6 years, we struggled in that area until I, really was like, all right. Because he would come to me. He would say, babe, this is what I need. He would communicate to me, right? He's communicating. He did his part. But it was me. It was me. And so you really have to make sure that you communicate what your expectations are, what your roles are. This is how, and it's simple conversation. How often do you want it? When do you want it? How do all of those things have to be talked about so that nothing is brushing on the rug, nobody stepping on eggshells with anybody, but making sure that you date, right? Dating, intimate conversations, and making sure that you worshiping in that bedroom.
Wow.
Amen. Amen. Applaud your husband for that fact of communicating it. But you also said something about turning it on and off, and I'm like, wow, that is so that's really two different issues and two different circumstances you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with what the man is communicating in his mind and what you're communicating in your mind. I want you to unlock that. Maybe, I mean, you can't do it from a husband perspective, but for a woman perspective, what did that look like, and how did you get through those doors?
So when it came down to his communication of what he needed and wanted, he definitely expressed that, I like you said, I want to feel wanted. I don't want to always have to initiate, because I had that mindset that I have to abstain from this. And so we're married. He wants to be intimate with his wife. And if I'm always rejecting him, he's feeling that rejection. He's feeling unwanted. And so there were times throughout those 6 years where he would periodically communicate. And then there would be times where, he's like, I'm like, hold up, we haven't been intimate in a little while. What's happening here? And he's like, I've tried. I've told you. I've expressed what I needed. And then and this was a cycle as well. I was like, okay, let me get right. Let me go get some lingerie. Let me go do something. Let me get myself right. And then we would go back into that cycle. I would retreat. He'd communicate. He'd retreat. I go back. All right, we're back again. And it was this constant cycle of that. And so it came down to a point where also, well, let me back up. And then also I took on a lot of roles. Stress can overwhelm me as well from time in the past. And so if I'm stressed about something or I'm overwhelmed about something, oh, the laundry didn't get done, or I got to finish this deadline at work, or the kids need this and the kids need that, or I need to do something at church, I would shut down. And I had to become more aware of those things and how to, compartmentalize some things.
Yeah.
But it came down to a point where last year where he told me the final time, like it was the last time he told me, like, babe, this is what I need from you. Something in me was just like, oh man, this is the one. And so because I had rejected him so many times. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Even when I'm tired. Yes.
Yeah.
And so once I finally just say, yes, it's been up. It's been up. And it's been stuck.
Wow. And I just want to mention, I'm going to give it to you, Sean, but I want to mention this because you talked about the whole thing, and this is really seriously, even for Christian women and men, is that factor of, I would just advise, to someone that may have dealt with some type of sexual assault or things like that to really get some counseling, because this can also affect the relationship. And you see sex something that's supposed to be, like you said, I love how you said it, a place of worship. It's a place of trauma. So I would, before we move on, I would highly recommend you, as we're on this subject, to get some help. Talk to your spouse and let them know what's going on. Be honest with them, communicate it, let them know what's going on.
And I think I definitely believe that you explained it very well. And I think it's important for wives, husbands, everyone to know to effectively communicate what you need, where you find yourself. And you talked about that your husband was honest with you all. And even when you tried to work on it, I'm glad you shared that, because I'm sure that there's plenty of wives that find themselves there. You've talked about it and you try to work on it, but then you find yourself retreating and you're back in the same cycle in the situation again. So what you've given is hope as well, because if you just keep on focusing and being more intentional about it, then we can, move forward from that in our relationships.
Right. We talked about effective communication. I want you to share with us a little bit about ineffective communication and what does that look like?
Sure. So ineffective communication would be putting the blame on them all the time. So saying like you, right? But marriage is I used to say it's a two-person thing, but it should be a three-strand cord, right? God, husband, and wife.
Yes.
And so we have to make sure that it's not just me. I have to take ownership. I have to take responsibility in my role in what I did and played in this. So it cannot always be you did this, you did that, you're never doing this. And also with that, using those nevers, those always, right? So there, you can't say for 100% he never does this, he never initiates, or he never cleans up after himself. You can't truly say that. You can't say you always forget to kiss me goodbye, or you always forget to give the kids a bag. Ma'am, sir, there is a time where he did, or he did, right? There's always a time. So you have to make sure, you have to be intentional. You have to be purposeful with your communication. Like I said, you have to have strategy. You have to have plans. So ineffective communication means that you are just generalizing everything. Everything is generic, right? Another point of ineffective communication is when you are coming up to a conflict or an issue, and then you bringing things that happened 2 weeks ago or 5 months ago. No, deal with the issue at hand.
Yes.
And then you cannot bring, you remember when we're talking about right now. Right now in this moment, not what happened 2 weeks ago. If we want to revisit that, fine, but let's get through this issue first.
Yes.
So you have to make sure that you stay on task, and you have to stay on point, and so that we're just not all over the place.
Right. That's reminding me of your nugget that you gave us just a few moments ago, getting past or getting to the other side of this situation, whatever it is, being focused about getting to the other side of this, because we definitely can do that. We want to add all 99 things together at one time because of this. So yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
I've written a book called We Need to Talk. And that was one line that I've always said, do not ever say. Because whenever I would bring that up to my husband, he would put up a whole wall. Like, oh man, what I do now? Right. And so I just found it ironic to name the title of my book that. But it's a guide to effective communication. And so I teach on and kind of give us a open story of my marriage and how I was able to get to effective communication, biblical principles along with that. With the who are you talking to? Right? Who is the person that you're talking to? It's your husband, and knowing who he is in Christ. You need to know how am I going to bring this topic up? When this is all a plan, and you guys have to plan this out. You have to plan out when you're going to talk about these things, right? Am I going to talk about this on our way to work? Are we going to talk about this pillow talk? We're going to talk about this, when the kids lay down. Why are we talking about this? Because there are times when you don't need to communicate.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to bring up every single situation. They say you got to choose your battles wisely, right? Him keeping the seat up. Is that really something I need to talk about? Is that something that's a you issue, not an I issue, right? Like that's not something, right? So we have to be wise in what we communicate. And why is this true? What I remember, when I was learning how to communicate with my husband, is this truly building him up? Is this amplifying him? Or is this because I want to be right and I want to point out your fault and I want you to point out your flaws? Why am I bringing this up? Like, really, like, think about that to yourself. Why am I bringing this up?
That's
right?
good.
And so the who, what, where do you want to bring this up? Are we going to go sit out on the deck and have some coffee? Are we going to go to the park? We're going to get into bed. Where are we going to talk about these things? So you have to make that plan. And in the book, I break all of those down even further. So I think if you come up with a plan and you strategize, that's really going to get you to the other side of the conversation.
Absolutely. So Ariel, let's tell the TMC listeners how they can connect with you. We want them to be able to connect with the Wife Advisor. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So there are 3 ways that you can connect with me. I kind of live on Instagram. That's kind of like my home base and where I really put out my content. So you can definitely find me there at The Wife Advisor on Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group, and we are called the Helpmates. And so the Helpmates is something that we continue to thrive, and we gather and I do monthly coaching on communication. And we also, do biblical teaching and Bible study as well. So you can find me there at the free Facebook group. You can look up the Helpmates, and then you can also go to thewifeadvisor.com. So if you would like to purchase my book, We Need to Talk, and I also have the Power Struggle Workbook as well. So if you've been married between 3 to 5, 7 years, and you find yourself butting heads, and you find yourself, we're coming to this conflict and we're not getting anywhere, it's okay. Most marriages get through that, but most marriages stay there and then they divorce. But my goal is to help you navigate through that so you can get to the next phase of your marriage. So it's going to bring down 5 steps of how to get through that power struggle phase. You can find it on thewifeadvisor.com.
Ariel, amazing. Thank you. On behalf of the TMC community, we want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you. This was phenomenal. I appreciate the conversation. I definitely am filled myself and I feel excited about it as well to go, maybe go do some worship in the bedroom tonight.
Yes, we
gotta love it. I'm gonna say yes.
Say yes.
Okay. So we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this amazing episode. And if you did, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified each time we upload a video. And if you're listening on iTunes, you can rate this podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.